Well, hey, and welcome back to Focus. We are nearing the end of our worry and anxiety series, and this is part 4. Today, we're going to look at 2 things you can avoid doing that are going to help you to worry less. Now, we all know that worrying isn't particularly helpful. It's often said that it's like a rocking chair. It gives you something to do, but it doesn't get you anywhere. But I also love what it says in Luke chapter 12, the reminder that it gives us. Can all your worries add a single moment to your life? And if worry can't accomplish a simple thing like that, what's the use of worrying over bigger things? That verse tells us that worrying is useless. So what can you avoid doing to reduce your worry? Well, the first thing that you can do is you can avoid comparison. Now that sounds pretty difficult, right? To avoid comparison, because it's never been easier to compare yourself to somebody else than it is today. We live in a culture of comparison. But the problem with comparing yourself to somebody else is often you compare your lowest points in your life to somebody else's highlight reel that you find on their Insta feed or their social feeds. And the problem with doing that is that you buy into the belief that your life sucks and everybody else's doesn't. That your life isn't perfect, whereas everybody else's is. And that just simply isn't true. But the truth is that all of us suffer from the temptation of comparing ourselves to other people. How can we stop doing that? Well, I think the first thing is to be secure in your identity in Christ, to be secure in who God says you are, a child of God, an heir with Christ, loved by the creator of the universe. How amazing is that? So that's the first thing. The second thing is to know that he has equipped you to do everything he's called you to do. He's equipped you to do everything he's called you to do. Often when I find myself comparing myself to how somebody else is doing, I will remind myself that actually God has given me everything I need to do exactly what he has called me to do. And I find that really helpful for myself personally. So perhaps for you today, there's something you can remind yourself of. And the third thing, know that you are created to be you. To know that you're created to be you, not to be somebody else. Not to be the person that you're comparing yourself with. And that literally makes you incomparable. Because you weren't created to be anybody else other than you. Other than the person God created. It says this in Psalm 139 verse 14. I praise you because I am fearfully and wonderfully made. Your works are wonderful, I know that full well. So the next time you find yourself worrying about the way that you look, the things that you say, how you say them, how people might perceive you, what people might think of you, just remind yourself that you are wonderfully made by God. How incredible is that? So that's comparison. And hey, that's a process, but it's one that is well worth trying. The second thing that you can avoid doing is to avoid being self-centered. Now, hey, that might sound a little bit harsh, but please just hear my heart behind this. I'm not saying that your worries or your anxieties are because you're selfish. I'm not saying that you're worried because you're selfish. But what I am saying is that realistically, the things that you worry about are going to be things that directly impact you. For example, what will you do if that relationship breaks down? What will people say about you if you really tell them what you're struggling with? The reality is that our worries revolve around us. It says this in Philippians 2 verses 3-4. It says, do nothing out of selfish ambition or vain conceit. Rather, in humility, value others above yourselves, not looking to your own interests, but each of you to the interests of the others. Now, perhaps today you need to shift your focus from an inward focus to an outward focus, where you're thinking more about others and you're focusing on their needs and not so much on the needs of yourself. And perhaps that actually for you is going to be what reduces your worry, reduces your anxiety, because you're not thinking so much about yourself. And the reality is, though, that is quite challenging, because culture today tells us to put ourselves first, to put ourselves above everybody else. But the Bible tells us differently. I always bang on about it, but it says in Romans chapter 12 verse 2, it says, don't copy the behavior and customs of this world, but let God transform you into a new person by changing the way you think. It tells us to be countercultural. Now, ultimately, if you want to worry less, the one thing which underpins everything we've covered in this series, I'm again not talking about an anxiety disorder, general worry and anxiety. If you want to reduce that, the best way you can do that is to continue to put God first in your life, to continue to put him at the very center of yourself. Because then you're able to give him your worries easily, you're able to trust him with them, and have an experience freedom. And the thing to remember is that you don't go through worry and anxiety alone. To steal what Hezekiah says in 2 Chronicles, he says, we have the Lord our God to help us and to fight our battles for us. Today you have God in your corner. If there's something that you're worrying about, something that you're anxious about, the best way to worry about that thing less is to entrust it to God.